Welcome! Another episode of No More Some Days. It's been a little bit since we've been on.
Weeks.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a crazy time, but we are back and better than ever. You know what I thought would be good is I think we probably have a few new listeners or people that might watch this that are new. So I thought it might be good for us to kind of recap why we made this particular series, this particular video series, and what kind of got us on that track. Do you want to give a little overview?
Yeah, so this is episode 39, so getting close to 40. I don't recall the exact day that we started, but basically the idea is, you hear people talk about, someday I'll do something, someday I'll pursue my dreams, someday I'll buy that house, someday I'll go on that trip, someday I'll reconcile with so-and-so, someday I'll get healthy. And, we just, what we're trying to do is come to terms with the reality as we're younger still, that you can't always rely on someday, that, tomorrow, for some people, today's their last day, and you don't always know that, and you don't plan for that, and you don't expect it. We all have this idea that we're going to live 80 plus years,
Right.
And that's just not the reality. And we need to try to take what we can from life every day and live like we don't have tomorrow, in all aspects,
Right.
In our health, in our spiritual life, in our finances, in our families, in our relationships. And so we really wanted to start this video series to talk about, to try to, one, it's still a work in progress for us, but then also to try to inspire other people to go after those things, because I think, we talked about in this series before that environment is so important, and a lot of us may not be in an environment that you have this kind of idea. Mm-hmm. You may be in an environment where you're just expected to go with the status quo, and you're expected to accept life as it is, and you're not expected to change and go after your dreams and go after things that are important. And so really we are just wanting to be an inspiration to other people as well, and trying to adopt this mindset that there is more out there for you. There is more good things out there, right. Because sometimes you can definitely feel like there isn't.
Oh, I totally agree. Someday is not a date on the calendar, right? And having, hopefully, this community, having us as, an example of people who are working toward that and are really conscious of that, hopefully will give you some inspiration, some encouragement along your own specific journey with your goals, and really going after things instead of waiting until that magical moment in the future. And kind of a little fun backstory. We were on a trip here, just kind of going throughout Florida, and we live here in Tampa, and a few years ago, and I saw this yacht that said, "Someday finally came." And that's kind of where we got this idea of No More Somedays, because we didn't want to have to wait until this magical date on the calendar. So tonight we're going to be talking about using our voice for good. We have so many opportunities, I feel like, especially with social media, to be able to have an influence on people. And we can do that for the good or for the bad or for the evil. And so I just wanted to, it's really been, I guess I should say this, it's really been striking me in my own personal life, just in some few friends that I've been talking with this about this particular subject, or just experienced in this last week or so, how many people have gotten negative comments, messages, whatever it is, that are blatantly attacking them or bullying them in some way. And how basically we just hide behind these computers and these devices, and we think it's okay to say whatever it is that we think is appropriate or whatever we think about a subject without using the filter that we might normally use if we're face to face with somebody, and we just blurt out whatever we think and don't, consider what another person might need, or what they might be experiencing, how they might be sensitive to something, and just how we talk about things.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's different terms. There's a lot of keyboard warriors out there, or keyboard tough people who, if they saw you in person,
Right.
they would say something nice, or wouldn't say anything at all and would go on with their day. But
Right.
it's given people a lot of courage to say things that they wouldn't say and shouldn't say. And again, like you said, it's removed a bit of a filter because there's some anonymity there, and people think they can say whatever. And a lot of times they're projecting their own insecurities and their own anger, bitterness, pain, hurt people. And so when somebody says something like what you're talking about, it's really it says a lot more about them, but that doesn't make it less hurtful when you hear that.
Oh, for sure. Exactly. So one of the things that we thought we'd start with is, and this is my opinion, and I'd love for you to share your opinion as well. Proving a point on social media is really not what social media, I believe, is the space to do so, if that makes sense. So if somebody comments, hey, Rebecca, if somebody comments or posts about something, let's say that's really controversial, okay? Sometimes we want to go in the comments and just blow it up and be like, I've seen these ones, and I know Matt has too, where people go on for paragraphs about whatever it is. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have an opinion about something, or you shouldn't stand up for what's right, but I personally don't believe that the space for it is on social media. I believe that face-to-face, in-person, or on the phone or FaceTime or something like that is a better space to have a conversation about these kind of controversial subjects, because a lot is lost in written communication. How do you feel about that?
I mean, pretty close. I might differ a little bit. Again, I think it depends on what is the post. Some people, again, why are you posting something?
Right.
Are you posting something to be controversial? You see it's a lot with religious, political topics, even maybe in the health space to some extent. Are you posting something just to gain that fire and that outrage that you want to start? You kind of are picking a fight.
Right.
So you have to go in, what is your intent of posting something? Because some subjects are just going to trigger a reaction depending on your audience.
Right.
But then when you're the one to respond, are you responding to actually seek information, or are you the one now wanting to instigate and say something that's going to light a fire for other people? And so if it is something where you think it might be controversial, but you really want to learn, then you can DM that person.
Yeah.
Again, if it's somebody you don't personally know, obviously the closer you can go to the source, and if it's a friend that's posting, call or meet them in person. But if it's something that you generally want to know, but you think, this is better, I don't want to light a fire, then you can instant message them and say, hey, this is what I think about it, or did you mean this, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think you really have to, when you're posting, understand what is your intent, and does this need to be posted? Is this the right forum for this information? And two, then when you're the one replying, the same thing. What am I trying to do by posting this? Am I just trying to start a fight, or am I really genuinely trying to learn something?
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about that in a moment. And I think that's a really good point, that talking to somebody as directly as you can is a really, really important thing, because not a lot can be done in our estimation through that. I mean, usually it kind of comes out where people are still pretty heavily feeling the way that they did at the end. Instead, what really could happen, and I love what you said about that, is what could I learn from that? Maybe I believe XYZ, but somebody else believes something different, maybe I could learn more about their view or why they feel that way, because everybody feels the way they do about something almost always because they truly believe that's right. You know, they believe that that's the right way to see things. And so if we're seeking to understand and we're seeking to learn from other people, it doesn't mean we're always going to agree. Then we will come at it from that spirit and that way. And I'm just going to say this with as much love as I can. Cowards or cowardice has to do with hiding behind a device or a computer or a keyboard or whatever you want to say. It's not any part of having true meaningful connections. And that's where we're going to talk more about this, but I really feel like we need that. And especially after 2020 and all that we faced, I feel like that is something that we truly need. And we are all seeking, regardless of the year.
Well, would you say another good filter is, would you say this to that person if you were standing next to them? If you wouldn't say this to somebody that you're meeting in conversation in a room, why would you say it to them over social media? Well, right. It's probably because you know they can't do anything about it. There's not going to be that tension, that confrontation.
Backlash. Yeah.
And so you can just say whatever you want and then, run. There's not any, and yeah, there's if there's no fear of having some confrontation of some kind, then like you said, it's cowardly to say something when you know there isn't going to be any consequences to that action.
To saying something hateful or rude or in somebody's face about something. I mean, it really is. It's specifically, I'm even thinking of a post I read today where this girl was saying that she had opened up about some vulnerabilities on her story that she had, and a person proceeded to message her privately, but messaged her about how, and targeting those things that she was trying to be vulnerable about, how, like, something with her mouth or something, which I don't think anything weird about it, but I guess she just had like a vulnerability about how her mouth looked, and this girl messaged her like, your mouth is so disgusting and all this, it's just so unnecessary, so hateful. And obviously we can't stop other people, but it can begin with us. And we do live in a country where we have freedom of speech, which is a wonderful, wonderful blessing. But how are we using that freedom, right? Are we using it to build people up, or are we using it to tear people down? I think that's a really big thing. And it goes back to, again, evaluating your motives before you post. Like, read it back to yourself. Think about, would I say this to somebody I love? Would I say this to somebody that I really, really respect and honor? For me, is a really hardcore thing that gets me in the right mindset is, would I say this to Jesus? Because when we are talking with our neighbor and we're trying to be like Christ, we're not showing that, even if we're typing it in that spirit, if we wouldn't even say it to him, And so think about that. Think about how you're saying it and your motives, and really evaluate it. And I think too, sometimes even if it's not something bad, and I'd love for you to weigh in on this too, I think sometimes certain things don't need to be said. Like defending something really big or whatever, especially in a public forum. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. You don't always have to make a comment. There doesn't always have to be, sometimes I think we're going to talk about how our voice matters, but sometimes we think that people are waiting with bated breath for us to weigh in, or we have to weigh in on this conversation, and a lot of times you don't. Like you said, it's just not necessary. Like, your time is better spent on other things. And I mean, one of the great downsides of social media is the distraction component, and a lot of times we are worried about commenting or seeing who said something controversial, as opposed to working on our own craft, creating something of our own that is valuable and that's going to be something that's adding to people's lives instead of these comments that really do nothing and nobody changes their opinion.
Right.
And your time would be more better spent doing something productive and
adding value.
Yeah, adding value. And yeah, I mean the old comment, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, is something to remember as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I also think this is a good question to ask. Is this comment coming from a place within me that is from love or from fear? One thing I think we've both seen is when somebody feels threatened by what you're doing, by stepping out and posting something, or by sharing a vulnerability, for example, like that girl did, sometimes they feel threatened, that other person does, by your success or by your putting yourself out there. I think Rebecca just made a comment about this, that, you know, like if making fun of people or even making fake accounts, because they feel threatened and they feel it makes them somehow feel better about themselves to target other people. And obviously, again, we can't change their mind. We can't stop them. I mean, we can block or report inappropriate behavior. I think that does need to be done. But we can control what we do and say. And if we evaluate before we post, is this coming from a place of love or a place of fear? I think that's a really, really good question to ask. Also, I think sometimes we can let our ego kind of drive our need to comment or even correct, where we might not do that in person. I don't know. What do you think about that? Because sometimes I think we feel the need to like go and correct somebody on their post or whatever, set them straight.
Yeah, human nature is to correct if there's something wrong, or if there's even perceived wrong. There's even a negotiating tactic, because it's so tied to our human nature that if you want to find something out from somebody, to say something wrong on purpose, because they're going to correct you and tell you the right thing, because that's so ingrained in us to correct somebody when they're wrong, because we want to appear as right. We want to appear as the expert.
Yeah, we do.
We want people to say, oh, you know, Matt, he knows about that. He's the expert.
Right.
Where that's so ingrained in us, and like you said, our ego, we want to be right.
Yep.
And so then it just becomes, you know, a spitting match, a shouting match a lot of times that you've seen, especially, again, these high-pressure areas of religion, politics, race, whatever it is. You see people, the ego, and again, like, yes, you could make a comment that maybe is true, but is it necessary? Is that adding?
Yeah.
Is the person that you're responding to even, you can usually tell, are they even receptive to that? Or are they just there to fight you?
Right.
And the other thing is sometimes then we'll want to gather our tribe of people and take them over to the other tribe and want to start a fight with the other side of things. Or, you know, we message our friends, hey, go check out so-and-so's post and let's go post on them.
Right. Or let's unfollow them, you know.
Yeah, it's just again, it's silly. And it goes back to, that's not productive. That's a distraction. That's just a waste of time.
And energy, yeah.
Yeah, a waste of time and energy. And especially, I think, if you are trying to represent being a Christian, you have an even greater responsibility of how are you showing up on social media.
Yes,
how are
totally
you
agree.
Because people are watching you. I mean, people who are Christians and people who aren't are watching you, and they know if you're professing to be a Christian, they know, hey, this person is posting these hateful comments.
Yep.
And again, even if it's not hateful, if it's a high pressure topic, again, like we started out with, maybe it's not the best forum.
Right.
It's not the right forum. You could explain your position a lot better talking to somebody over the phone or in video or whatever. There's so much lost in translation on these sensitive topics that it's just you're putting more, you're planting more landmines to try to walk across, and it just isn't productive.
Yeah, totally agree. So, I mean, I feel like we're probably beating a dead horse here, but we're just saying, really, just think about it. Think before you post. And, you know, like I said, this last year, we've seen so much like hate and dissension just flying around. I feel like a lot of people even this year like have gotten divorced and stuff because of having to be home more and really face some of the issues that they've maybe running from otherwise. And so we have such an opportunity with whether we're still at home and locked down or not to come together and to use our voice for good. And like I said, or like Matt said, we're really wanting to emphasize that your voice matters. You may think, oh, well, they already have like 50 hate comments. It's fine if I go and troll and be a hateful person. No, it's not. But the other side of that is your one comment, your one private message, your one positive post, your one call to a friend could make the difference for them. And so, or your one message, whether positive or negative, could add or take away something that's super important. This past week, I've been a little more intentional with reaching out to some people and just saying, hey, I haven't talked to you in a bit, but how are you? How have you been this year? I was thinking about you. And even just that, in some conversations, people have been like, oh my goodness, I so appreciate that. Like, that totally made my day that somebody was thinking about me, And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm saying you have the same opportunity to do the exact same thing, We all have that opportunity. We all have that ability. It doesn't cost anything to just reach out to somebody, to just go knock on your neighbor's door and ask how they are, I think basic things like that can be us using our voice for good, whether it's on social media, which can be an amazing platform, or off social media.
Yeah, somebody recently, this was not social media, but a stranger said something to me that a couple weeks ago that completely changed my day, and not just my day, but really breathed life into some things that I was trying to do that they'll probably never know how big of a deal it was. Mm-hmm. And it was just, it took 3 seconds and it was done, and it completely changed my day. And so while, we, especially in the social media age, people want a large following, we want large crowds, we want people to pay attention to us. And so we negate the power of one, and regardless of how big your following is or how many people that follow you or seem to know what you have to say, if you impact one person, that's huge. And that's enough.
It is.
And it all starts with one person and it grows from there, but don't negate the power that you have over 1 people or 5 people. The one nice thing you can say to somebody, you don't know, even if they don't say it, you don't know the big impact that's going to have. If you see somebody on social media who has a small following and you can see they're trying to post, they're trying to grow, they're trying to be positive, show them some love. And hey, I really appreciate that. I really love what you're doing. That can make a huge difference. That person may have been about to quit that day and say, I'm done. Nobody cares. And you can really change somebody's day, their trajectory. We don't see, life is a long path. We don't see, a comment that you make today may 5 years down the road, that person may have a huge influence, but they may have quit if you hadn't made that one comment.
Yeah, that reminded me of a letter apparently I wrote to this friend of mine one time, like years ago. And she still remembered that, like a couple years ago when I was like, hey, how have you been? I haven't talked to you in forever. And she was like, well, I totally remember that letter you wrote me. And I was like, what letter? And so that's where I was thinking even too, like writing a handwritten card, which seems so obsolete anymore, but seriously, like somebody can hold on to that and see that forever. And that can be so impactful on somebody that, again, you don't know. I think about like throwing a pebble in to the water and how you see the ripples go. You may not see the ripples of what you're doing today. You may not see the growth from the seeds you're planting today that are good, but know that it will happen. It will come about because of the good that you're trying to plant now. Go ahead.
Just the other thing, there's, again, just standing up for what's right too is really important. And this is, again, the power of peer pressure. There's some studies that you've probably heard of where a teacher, they'll put it in a classroom setting, and there's one person that is the real study subject and everybody else is kind of plants. And the teacher will draw 3 lines and they'll say like, do two of these lines match? And I'm going to butcher this, and it's obvious that the 2 lines don't match. They're not the same length. And everybody in the class except the one person is told to say that they do match. And almost, I think it's like 80 or 90%, then the person that knows it's not right will say, yes, they do match to conform with the group. But then they did the same experiment, and the one person was still in there that wasn't in on it, and there was one plant that was supposed to stand up for it and say, no, they don't match. And then I think it was only like 30% of the people, only 30% agreed that it wasn't. And so there was a huge swing with only one other person standing up and saying, no, that's not right.
Yep.
To give the other people the confidence to say, no, that's not correct. And so when you see either somebody being attacked or you have the opportunity to stand up for something, you may be that one person that sways the crowd to say, no, that shouldn't be happening. That's not what's right. It doesn't take as much as you think to change the tide of something that's not going the right way.
I totally agree. We have an opportunity to speak up for what's right. And to hopefully, if we see this or hear about it, to in appropriate ways report it or call it out and message that person and say, look, this is inappropriate. This is no business. This is no part of what bringing us together looks like. No part of how one human should be treating another human at all. And honestly, it starts with us. Uniting. I'm speaking from my particular standpoint, especially, but I see all this stuff happening in the world and even our country, where people are just so divided, so heavily divided. And here's the thing, uniting, if we want that to happen, I'm not saying not to be individuals still or still have our opinions, but uniting, it starts with us. It starts with one person. It starts with, a few people. It doesn't have to be this huge, massive group, like Matt was just saying, to sway the tide and to really hopefully make an impact in this positive way. So I want to challenge you guys for a second. I'm doing this leadership course right now, and the guy, Bob Heilig, who runs it, he challenged us in this one video that I was watching of his, to really speak up and to, not necessarily just about the subject, but a myriad of subjects. But it doesn't have to be a social media post. It doesn't have to be super public. It could just be messaging somebody and saying, hey, I was thinking about you, and I know maybe you're going through something right now, or you might be in a situation where things are rough, or whatever it is. Or maybe it's just, hey, I literally was just thinking about you, asking about how they are. Something, it can be big, it can be small, it doesn't matter, but choose one thing where you're going to intentionally plant one of those good seeds. And it could also be like standing up for somebody when, or standing up and saying something that's not right, calling it out. When you see something done on social media or whatever it is. I think there's a lot of different ways that this could look like, but choose one way this next week that you're gonna stand up for what's right, that you're gonna intentionally plant one of these good seeds. Also, I think choosing not to comment sometimes is a good thing, like we mentioned. And so maybe you could choose that could also mean that maybe you just choose not to comment, not to engage when you normally would. And just saying, hey, I'm not gonna engage with that. I'm not gonna be a part of that. But I see them, I see that comment, or I see that post, and I'm just gonna bless and release and move on. So like I said earlier, we can't control those around us, but we can control the way that we show up in the world and how we show up in relation to the people around us. And so we have an opportunity. We can just brush things off, or just say, hey, that's not something I'm going to be a part of. That's not what I'm going to engage in, or whatever. Or we can choose to engage and to be okay with how things have been going, and our results, our interactions with people aren't going to change, and it's going to continue to be something that's negative. So it's each of our choice, but we're saying, hey, you have an opportunity here, to say something mean or hateful, but you also have an opportunity to say something really good and make a difference.
Yeah.
So I think that's everything that we have for tonight. Just a quick reminder, we are on YouTube, so follow us. It's just No More Some Days. We'd love for you to subscribe and to share with your friends, family, whomever you think could benefit from this series or from this video. Also, you can feel free to share this post in and of itself on your profile if that's better for you. And then we are also on Instagram at No More Some Days with a Z, because that's how we do it. No, S wasn't available. And we are going to be doing a giveaway for every 100 followers that we get. So stay tuned for that. You have anything else?
I don't think so.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for watching.